Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the hyped books that I love, because it's okay to be basic sometimes. You don't always have to have an unpopular opinion. You can like the books that everyone is loving. That is fine. And I think sometimes people, because they don't want to be just talking about all the same books that everyone else is talking about, they don't always mention how much they love certain books because they've been talked about a million times. But I just want to give some appreciation because these are some of my favorites. I know that like half of the people on BookTube have read these and like love them, but I also love them and I want to talk about them. So I'm doing that. So the first ones that I'm going to talk about is a trilogy. It's my favorite trilogy of all time. I know that it's overhyped, but I love it anyway. And that is The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. Cassandra Clare as a whole is very hyped. Maybe not so much anymore, but she still is, but she'd been a big name in YA fantasy for a while now. And I wouldn't say that I love any of her other series as much as I love these. I do love the Mortal Instruments, but these are my favorite. These follow Tessa Gray in Victorian London. So she arrives from New York and she soon gets dragged into the, Shadowhunter world and discovers that she has the ability to shapeshift. These, as well as I think every other Cassandra Clare book, it is character focused. If you love the characters, you're going to get some bit of enjoyment out of these books. And my copy is so battered and bruised. I've read these about like 7 times probably. Most recently in February. Yeah, because I decided to reread them before Chain of Gold came out. And every time I read them, I'm always afraid that I will not like them. And that's just not true. I always love and adore these. And they're probably the only series that like makes me a bit emotional. Because it's just something that I loved for so long. I think maybe 5 years ago I started reading these maybe. I mean, I read these. I started reading the Mortal Instruments about 6 or 7. And then I waited a while because I was like, a historical setting, I was like, I'm not gonna like that. And then when I finally read them, I loved them even more than the Mortal Instruments. I loved them for a very long time. And they're a bit battered and bruised, and I have it signed by Cassandra Clare. I can totally understand why people don't like Cassandra Clare as an author and also why they might like this series, but I don't care. And I think even if I read these for the first time now, I probably wouldn't love them as much because I've changed a lot as a reader and I've read a lot more. But because of the fact these were, near the earlier times of my fantasy reading, I love them, and just that nostalgia connected to it makes me love them even more. Okay, so the second series I'm going to talk about is maybe a slightly more recent BookTube favorite, but it's still a couple years old. And those are the Six of Crows duology, which is Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. Maybe a trilogy. I have mixed feelings on that, but so this follows Kaz Brecker and a group of misfits as they try and perform an impossible heist to the Ice Court, which is supposedly this military stronghold which is unbreachable. I think people really love this because of how diverse the characters is, especially compared to the Grisha trilogy, which I think it has very basic characters. It has an interesting world, but I think all of the characters are really basic, including the Darkling. I don't see it, guys. I don't see why you all love him. And okay, I do love Nikolai, which I can realize that he's a bit basic too. But these are so well crafted and there's so much more to them than most other YA characters, I think. And that's something that I think a lot of people love about this, is just seeing these characters grow, seeing their struggles and seeing their relationships with each other is just, I think that's really what makes people love these books so much. And I think it's 100% worthy of all of that praise. Of course I'm going to think that because I love these, but I guess I can kind of see a more recent audience kind of loving these compared to the Infernal Devices. Like, I can notice that, you know, the villain in the Infernal Devices is quite flat, and I can see that people who are only reading it now for the first time would probably like, oh, I've read a lot of these characters, and so without that nostalgia maybe it wouldn't stand up for most people nowadays, but I think these definitely do. Of course, I do think it is needed to say that if you are very plot driven, you mightn't love it. It is definitely a character focused and character study, but it does still have a bit of a plot. Yeah, I will say that I preferred these the first time. I still love them the second time around, but I definitely didn't have the same feelings towards it the second time. Also, I would just like to point out that this is basically just my favorite books, and I'm not mad about that. The third series that I'm going to talk about is the only adult series that I have on this list. That is The Shades of Magic by V. Schwab. You could probably put a lot of V. Schwab as hype books that I love. Well, this and The Villains definitely. They're very hyped. I don't think her YA series get as much. I do think the archived series, that should get more love, but that's not the point of this video. So The Shades of Magic is my second favorite series of all time. First being the Infernal Devices. So The Shades of Magic follows Kel, who is an Antari, which is a blood magician who has the ability to travel to the different Londons. So basically there are these parallel Londons. So there is Grey London, which is our London, which has no magic. There is Red London, which is Kel's London, and in that world there is a perfect balance between magic and humanity. And then there is White London, which is dying and losing its magic, and they have to kind of use, I guess, kind of darker magic to get any bit of power. And then there is Black London, which is completely dead because it became corrupted by magic. So Kel, because of his ability to travel through these Londons, he is basically the royal messenger to all of the other kings and queens. And he also has a bit of a side job of smuggling, which he should not be doing. And one day he smuggles the wrong thing, and that sets off a whole chain of events which he has to try and set it right before he destroys all of the Londons. I love these so much. I think a lot of these books are like comfort reads for me. A Darker Shade of Magic is my favorite book in the series, which is an unpopular opinion. Usually people prefer the second and third, which I adore the second and third, but I might change my mind because I am currently rereading the whole series, so maybe I'll have a new favorite. I just adore this. And it's kind of hard to say why. And I think it, again, like with the Infernal Devices, it's a series that has a lot of meaning for me. The Infernal Devices, and Cassandra Clare in general, she was one of the first YA writers that I read, and she really got me into the YA fantasy genre. And then the Infernal Devices, I just loved those characters so much, and I became very attached to them. So they have a lot of meaning. Six of Crows, not so much. I just read them one summer and I really loved them, but they don't have any emotional connection to me. Whereas these were the first adult fantasy series that I read, and I read them, well, I read the first one anyway, as I was preparing for school exams, which maybe not the best decision, but I picked up A Dark Shade of Magic and it was the perfect escape for me, and I just love the character so much. I love Kel as a main character. He is so entertaining to me. I find him quite relatable. And I just love the brotherly relationship between Ryan and Kel. And I also do like Lila. I'm not the biggest fan of her in the first book, but just the development she goes through in each book is really amazing to see. I get that some people don't like this either, but I personally find it so amazing. I've said it before, I really love elemental magic, and I think that comes from just my childhood. I used to love watching like TV shows and reading books that had elemental magic in them. So for example, the Winx and the Witches, and also I love Charmed, which is, there's not really elemental magic, but I just love magic. And then the Stardust books, I loved those. If you could only have one of the elements, I'm only going to use the 4, not the... There's also bone included in this, so we're not going to count that. But if you could use only fire, water, earth, or air, which would you want? I always, as a child, I always wanted fire or water, which are like, you know, the complete opposites. But yeah, I think now water, but earth is also really cool. This video has taken a weird turn. Anyway, I love these. They're hyped, yes, but I love them, yes. Series number 4, that is the Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. I don't actually love the Raven King, even though I think upon reread I might love this more. I think this was about a 3-star, whereas all of the rest were 5. So the Raven Cycle, it follows 4 boys and a girl called Blue, and Blue kind of has a thing against these Raven boys because they go to a really posh fancy school, and then she somehow gets herself dragged into their adventure because they are all trying to find a dead Welsh king, and that's all you need to know. Because that's a weird synopsis, and that's because these are kind of weird books. Plot-wise, it is very, you're like, wait, what is happening? I actually really like that about it. And again, a common theme with these is they have really great characters, in my opinion, and this one is no exception. I love Gansey. He is one of my favorite characters. It's this friendship group, and yeah, there's a small bit of romance in here, but I love a good friendship group, and that's one thing that I also think we don't get enough of in books, is already formed friendships. A lot of the time we just get them, you know, a character and they're meeting these people for the first time, and that is happening with Blue, but we already have that dynamic between the 4 boys. They already know each other so well, and I really love that. I have reread The Raven Boys earlier this year. I haven't reread any of the others, but even upon this reread, you pick up on so much more. Because I definitely remember the first time reading it, I was like, I am loving the vibes of this, but I have no idea what's happening. And reading it, I was like, oh my god, you have been hinting at things all along, and I was just too stupid to get them. It is definitely a series that improves upon reread, so I will have to definitely reread the rest of the series, and especially The Raven King, because I think maybe a reread would definitely change my opinion on this. I don't think I will be able to do that before the end of the year, so maybe next year. So this series, yeah, it's definitely not a very plot focused and a very magic focused system. It's a very kind of light plot, and it's a light magic, and it's just about the journey that these characters are going on together, and it also contains just beautiful writing and also just some really great atmosphere. Like, if you are a person who loves atmospheric books, The Raven Boys. I mean, I'm saying these, but most people have read these. So then book number 5 on this list. So this is technically part of a series, but I don't love the series as much as I love this one. Another one that I was very late for. I only read it for the first time this year. And yeah, and that is Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I definitely put this off for a very long time because it is mixed media, but I get it. I definitely get it. What actually really made me change my mind about this was because Books and Lala, she read it for the first time, was it like late last year? Can't remember. She just absolutely adored this, and I was like, okay, maybe I really should pick it up. And I did. I absolutely love this. This, in my opinion, is the best one in the series. I think the second and third one just followed the exact same plot with different characters. I still liked them, but I thought this one was the best. And I also think it has the best characters in it as well. So this follows Katie and Ezra, and one day the planet that they're living on is attacked by this corporation who wants to take the planet so they can mine whatever resources on it for themselves. And Katie and Ezra flee, and they have to help each other out despite the fact that they had just broken up. Potentially so many people that they know and love are dead, and kind of the only people they have to help them is a person that maybe they don't want to be talking to right now. and I love this so much. Again, this is another one obviously I get the hype for it because I love it, but it is such a unique story and I'm really interested in reading more mixed media books. So the sixth and final book that I will be talking about in this video is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman, and I'm desperate for a reread. It's been over a year since I reread it and I want it. I remember when I reread it for the first time, I was like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna love this as much anymore. And then just somewhere along the way, now I was sucked right back in and I was like, my heart. So this follows Frances, who is basically a study machine. She is the perfect student. She's the head girl. She keeps her head down and she gets really good grades, and she wants to get into a very prestigious university. But nobody knows the real Frances, who likes to wear weird clothes and who loves to draw fan art for this podcast that she loves. And then in comes Al at last, who she was once friends with his twin sister, and they form a very close friendship, and it's just beautiful. It's a book that focuses on friendship, and it's also a book that focuses on how much pressure schools put on people, and how just because you feel that there is a certain path you should follow, that doesn't necessarily mean you should, that you should actually do what you want. And there is other ways for success that aren't just college and university and studying really hard. Again, this is another book that just means a lot to me, and it just spoke to my soul, I suppose. You can kind of split these into two kind of different categories. One of those is just unique books, I suppose. This really unique characters and very diverse. A very whimsical and atmospheric story that we kind of don't really get in YA fantasy, I feel. Too much. There's definitely a couple, and then this obviously unique because of the format that it's told. And then this category is books that just mean a lot to me and I read in the right time, because these got me into YA fantasy. These got me into adult fantasy, and the two of these I read during my final year of school. This obviously, she's in her final year of school and I just related so hard. And these were just the perfect escapism during exams. So these are ones that I have like a real connection to because of a certain time in my life. Something you can say for all of them is that they all have absolutely incredible characters, in my opinion. Pretty much all of my favorite characters are within these books, and like a couple others on my shelf, but majority of them are from these books. So I guess basically what this entire video is just me saying is I love books with good characters, and if I like them, I will love it. I want you to all tell me down below. Obviously, I want you to tell me what element you would control. And then number two, I want you to tell me what is your favorite series that is very hyped and you think completely deserves the love that it gets. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.